Hello, and you're listening to EcoJustice Radio, a project of SoCal 350 Climate Action. Our show presents environmental and climate stories from a social justice frame, featuring voices not necessarily heard on traditional, mainstream, or even public media outlets. Welcome. I am Jessica Aldridge. On today's show, Cultural Fire, Native Land Management, and Regeneration, host Carrie Kim interviews Elizabeth Azzuz, Secretary of Cultural Fire Management Council. They discuss her work using traditional native Karuk methods of prescribed burning to protect forest, hill-degraded ecosystems, and reestablish forest-grown food, medicine, and products. Elizabeth Azzuz is a cultural fire practitioner. She gathers and propagates traditional food and medicinal plants. Of Yurok and Karuk descent, she comes from and lives in her traditional territory where the Trinity River flows into the Klamath on the north coast of California. Elizabeth is a mother and grandmother. At the age of 4, she learned about burning from her grandfather. Native peoples used the tool of fire as medicine. Fire was understood to be a spirit, a healer, and sacred in its own right. Traditional native-controlled burning, called cultural fire, utilizes ancient agro-forestry practices, technology developed throughout time by the Karuk tribe and indigenous peoples around the world. The goal is to manage the forest landscape to provide for wildlife and people to safely coexist and thrive in an increasingly volatile ecosystem. With global climate heating turning the west coast of the U.S. into an arid tinderbox, been another year of the megafire. Thus, the work of Elizabeth Azzuz and the Cultural Fire Management Council sets an important example of how to protect and regenerate forests for the people and wildlife who call them home using traditional ecological knowledge. Thank you for tuning into Cultural Fire, Native Land Management, and Regeneration.
Aloha. Thank you for tuning in. This is Carrie Kim. We come to you from Tongva lands, aka Los Angeles, and give thanks to the Tongva ancestors who have stewarded these lands for countless millennia. I wanted to open with reviewing this past year has been the year of the megafire. Some will say we live in the age of the megafire. More than 5 million acres, I'm sure plus, have burned in California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington. And also we have seen massive fires from Siberia to Australia and also in the Arctic. And this age of megafire is compelling us to rediscover fire as a healer, as a spirit, as medicine for the earth. And to help us understand how to cultivate right relationship with fire, we welcome on the show today Elizabeth Azzuz, Secretary of Cultural Fire Management Council. She is a cultural fire practitioner and a gatherer of traditional foods and medicines who comes from the villages of Wechpus and Katamin. And she is a mother and a grandmother and has learned about burning by her Karuk grandfather since she was 4. Welcome, Elizabeth. We are grateful to have you bring your wisdom and traditional knowledge to this show today. So to begin, I wanted to ask you just the first fundamental question. If you could please define cultural burning. What is it?
Cultural burning for us is a way to restore our land. It's our connection to the land, to the trees, plants, animals, all beings. We coexist here. Cultural burning for me is a way to restore our traditional foods, medicines, restore our hunting grounds, our gathering grounds. In times past, 7 generations past, the women cared for our gathering areas while the men cared for their hunting areas. And then we came to 100 years of fire suppression, where we weren't allowed to take care of the land any longer, which brings us to our current state of being, where fire has taken over great swaths of land and caused large amounts of distress for people who fear fire. They don't know fire. Mm-hmm. So cultural burning for us means that we don't have those things happen in our environment. We burn around our elders' homes to protect them. We burn around young families' homes in our family burning projects. So we're actively trying to clean up 100 years worth of debris dead and down fuels in forest areas. And it's going to require all of us, not just our people, but all people on this earth, to help cleanse our mother.
Agreed, 100% agreed. And I would also add, 100 years and maybe 500 years of deep ignorance, or, having forgotten a lot, for having forgotten our ancestral ways, forgotten where we come from, and so much more. But that's the back history that so many of us share. I wanted to also ask you, as you are part of the Cultural Fire Management Council, what the aim of this org is and what the gestation of was it? How did it come into being?
Yes, our executive director, Margot Robbins, is also a weaver. She's an extraordinary weaver, by the way, grandmother, mother. She started burning initially for basket materials. Mm-hmm. Our women were running out of hazel sticks, and they require fire. They're a serotinous plant. If they're not burned, they're not pliable, they're not weavable. Mm-hmm. And so we had many of our elder women coming to her and saying, we don't have any sticks. We can't make baskets anymore. We can't teach our young women, what are we going to do? And so she started her first burn in 2013. It was 7 acres done by the Yurok tribe and CAL FIRE with our small local organizing group.
Okay.
So just being able to, get fire back on the ground, we started with a group called Building Healthy Communities. They came in, they talked to us about what our community wanted, what did we need. And if you know anything about a reservation, we have a store, a small church, a 2-room school, and a small community center. Mm-hmm. That's all that's here. Mm-hmm. The people didn't ask for buses or groceries or even a laundromat. We don't have any of these things. Mm-hmm. They wanted to put fire back on the ground. That was their primary goal, was to bring fire back to the landscape. Mm-hmm. And so our board are our elders. We, talk to them, see what's the best advice, and we work very hard. And Margot created a nonprofit called Cultural Fire Management Council. And here we are 7 years later, fully funded, working well on the land, and we now have a full-time crew and all of our own equipment.
That is amazing. So how many people deep is your organization at this point? Over 7 years, I'm sure it's grown.
It hasn't grown as much as it could probably. This year is the first time we'll hire a full-time crew of 5. Mm-hmm. Our board has approximately 7 members, and we have 2 seats that are held by Yurok Tribal Council reps for our districts that we live in. Mm-hmm. So we partner with our tribe. We work with them. We partner with CAL FIRE and the Forest Service and various other tribes in the area to make these burns happen. And we also work with the Nature Conservancy and the Fire Learning Network.
What is the Fire Learning Network with the Nature Conservancy? Are they doing it nationwide or?
It is. They produced a newsletter. From the Fire Learning Network came our group, the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, where we're reaching out to tribes all across the United States to get their burning rights back.
That is amazing. Yeah, that is so powerful. And they've been working with that over these 7 years too, or is it longer than that has existed?
No, the IPBN is a little younger than Cultural Fire. The Nature Conservancy and the Fire Learning Network are a group. And so we work with Mary Huffman at the Nature Conservancy for the IPBN.
Okay.
She's been a wonderful leader, helped us to build this, and we co-manage it with the Karuk and Hupa tribe. Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about, the co-management with the Karuk and Hupa? Was it something that you reached out to them, or simultaneously really the tribes knew they had to come together to unite and help this come into being?
Margot and Mary Huffman actually had quite a few meetings about it. And then they brought in Renee Stauffer from Karuk, Bill Tripp from Karuk, Dr. Lake. We brought in Nolan Colgrove from the Forest Service and Merv George from the Forest Service. And we worked with the Hupa Fire Department and some of their people there, their basket weavers. They also had a great interest in getting their materials back.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was, as you know, many tribes cannot get along. We cannot seem to work together, but we did have a common ground in wanting to bring fire back and to restore our materials and our land.
Mm-hmm.
And so this group allows us to all sit in a room together and build a healthy country plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we created a healthy country plan, and it basically is the goal of restoring this land back to creation.
This is so inspiring to learn about. I didn't know. I don't know if anyone else, any of our other listeners knew of this network. The Burning Network, and it's so wonderful to know that this is happening. And I wondered, what have you seen, having been in this for now 7 years, seen its evolution? What have you seen change in the environments where you're conducting cultural burns, in the biodiversity?
The most amazing change for me,
mm-hmm.
the greatest change for me is we're doing prairie and meadow restoration to restore the elk habitat in our territory.
Mm-hmm.
So our elk will travel from the coast up into the high country.
Uh-huh.
And I've actually seen some in the area where I live, which is almost in the middle of the territory they will need to travel through. So we work with many universities. Oh, yes, since my father. And he's been gone 20 years now.
Wow, that you hadn't seen elk.
Well, I hadn't seen any in our territory. Oh, no, we've seen them everywhere, but not here in our territory.
Right.
They haven't been able to cross the mountains because of all of the debris. There's none of the foods they like to eat. They're very particular about their diet.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of that is we have botanists and students from many backgrounds come out and study the hazel, the acorns, the huckleberries, the elk. It's amazing to watch a grad student follow an elk around collecting scat and think that's the most amazing thing on earth.
Are they from Humboldt State, or which where are they from, these students?
Well, there's Dr. Sifa Ramos is from Humboldt State. She's studying elk. Mm-hmm. We have Dr. Tony Marksblocks from Stanford. He studied our hazel and worked with Dr. Lake. So, we have so many amazing people. Ariel Halperin, she studied acorns.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these studies go back to the tribes. The traditional ecological knowledge stays with the people. They produce their papers and we retain the rights to them.
That's the way it should be. Yes. I'm wondering, given where you are and what you have learned yourself since the age of 4 with your grandfather, what you would most want to impart to listeners about fire.
When I was 4, my grandfather, who was blind, he was Karuk, caught me burning. He could smell, obviously, very well. And so he decided to sit me down and explain that fire is not a toy. Fire is a tool, and fire is family. Fire is something we use to heat our food, to keep us warm, to restore our land, to care for the animals, the one-legged tree people. There are so many variations on how we all fit in this world. But for me, the greatest thing has been watching the youth come into this and fully understand their place in our environment and want to restore it.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been the greatest thing for me is, now I'm a grandmother, so I'm going to be teaching my grandchildren about fire now. My grandson, who's 19 months, only wants to burn angelica root in the morning and at night. That's his first thought, is to burn his root.
I love that.
And it's the funniest thing.
I love that.
Me too. He stands in front of it and Yeah, so he needs to burn his medicine in the morning and at night, and then he's comfortable.
Well, it's a very strange thing. We had someone else on the show, Taylor Bright, speaking about bioremediation and microremediation with fire, and we got into the topic of fear around fire. And then I also was pondering, pyromania. I was wondering, just musing about it, that perhaps pyromania is also some kind of distortion about some original relationship with fire that hasn't been intact. And so it comes out as this strange perversion.
Yeah.
It's just gone the wrong way because it's lacking in the person's, they don't have relationship with it anymore. So it becomes something more destructive.
That's true. For me, growing up as a young woman, when we were in ceremony, you're not allowed to look in the fire. You look below it or you look above it, but you don't look into it. And now as an adult, I no longer participate in ceremony except for, in the kitchen or helping. Mm-hmm. But there's a piece of me that just, I am drawn to fire. I love the work it does. I love the smell. I can tell by the smells of smoke what's burning. It's just, for me, fire is family. It's a necessary tool to keep our home and our environment safe. Mm-hmm. But it also provides so many things, our huckleberries, the smoke from the fire kills the weevils that destroy our acorns, kills the moths that, destroy certain foods. Smoke also creates an inversion layer over the river to cool the water down for the fish so that they can swim upstream, in cooler waters. There's so many things that fire and smoke do that humans don't even think about. It's just an inconvenience to them. Right. To me, it's frightening to see the look on people's face, but inside I smile very large because I want to see the earth cleaned.
Yeah. I think this is the era of people coming to remember our interdependence. And as you said, all peoples have to come together to heal and restore Mother Earth, to her original state, the way, I don't mean original like she doesn't evolve, but just back to where we are taking care of her.
Yeah.
Yes. Ron Good, I watched a documentary from KCAT, Tending the Wild, and it was about cultural burning. And Ron Good, who's of the Mono tribe, I don't know if he's still chairman, but he had said, if you are afraid of fire, you won't understand fire. And so, I think of the many people who are divorced from the natural world, and also they lead more of a materially driven versus spiritually led life. And so, I have to say, I've honestly never met a Native person who was afraid of fire.
It's true.
I don't know how you work within those frameworks, because I know you also work with firefighters, right? You also help train firefighters in a particular way, or I'm not exactly sure what the extent of that is, you're training with firefighters.
We do. We utilize firefighters. We train firelighters. We work with firefighters who are used to suppression. And we have recently trained some that have never used a drip torch at all. They have absolutely no idea what they're going to get into. And so when they come, at first they're a little upset that they only have, what do you mean? This is all we're doing. We're training to do what? But, we're almost having to untrain some habits and retrain them to know that it's okay to do what we're doing.
No, meaning that it's kind of the opposite of what they're trained to do, to be the fire lighter.
Absolutely. It's extremely opposite.
Right. But it's probably very liberating for them once they go through that process. Do you feel that they have a big...
We've had some people not want to leave us.
I'm sure they probably wanted to...
people that don't want to leave. Yeah, they want to stay and work.
They want to be on your crew, your full-time crew. Yeah, I get it. Of course, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. And, what they're doing, they have to be around a lot more toxicity.
Absolutely.
Hey listeners, quick break here. We hope that you're enjoying EcoJustice Radio. Stay connected by subscribing on all major podcast apps and visit our website, ecojusticeradio.org, to check out previous shows and guests and get connected with us on social media. Today you are listening to Cultural Fire, Native Land Management and Regeneration with guest Elizabeth Azzuz of Cultural Fire Management Council and host Carrie Kim.
Could you explain when people say, Native peoples, like for example, Ron Good, again, I heard this from him, that he had said the land needs fire. So a lot of people do not understand this, or they're something they've never heard before. And I'm wondering if you could explain to them, why does the land need fire? And
the land needs fire because the majority of their plants are serotinous. If they don't have fire, certain cones from certain trees don't open. Certain plants are not usable, not edible, don't produce well. There was a natural balance to things before humans came along, and pushed our way into that environment and tried to control it. You know, humans need to realize one thing. We're not in control. We are in the middle of all of this with everything else, and we need to learn to work together. You know, this is the hardest thing for humans to do. We all think everything is our way or no way at all, which is furthest from the truth. You know, when you're out in the environment, when you're out burning, you're looking at the wind, you're looking at the humidity, there's so many things that come into play before you can actually lay fire on the ground and watch it do its work. But, you know, we were talking about what we do with suppression and prescribed fire. The Nature Conservancy works with us in training participants from all over the world. They come from Spain. I have a dear friend in Switzerland who came to watch to try to understand why I love fire so much. You know, the whole piece of training, whole piece of training to burn is something that suppression firefighters are not taught. You know, they know how to clean up around a fire. They know how to make it look all nice, but they don't know how to make it look nice from start to finish. You know, they come into an area that's burnt and it's, you know, just trashed, and they have to try to put that out and clean it up. Right. We go into an area that has a lot of down brush and debris. We burn it off, and the ash and the charcoal filter through into the water table, restores the creeks and the rivers and the aquatic life. You know, that ash also helps remove ticks and fleas from the animals that roll in that ash. There's so many things that are almost symbiotic in nature and humanity, but humans tend to push that away because they don't understand it. The more they move back towards it, the more they learn that their food comes from the land. You know, the animals, the water, the creatures that live here with us, we'll start to take better care of them.
Yeah, I think shifting from this Anthropocene kind of focus that everything is about human beings. I mean, one of the things that always disturbs me when you see any fires be covered on the media is that immediately what they speak about is structures. How many structures burned? And nobody speaks about, well, how many animals died? How much habitat was lost? How many, microbes died? And who keeps track of that? They don't.
Absolutely.
And it's a great, great loss for the entire planet.
It
everywhere.
is.
So, it's not the most important thing. And, of course, we know that there's been so much encroachment into wildlands and people building where there shouldn't be buildings.
Yeah.
There's so much that needs to change.
Like I said, humans don't realize that they're not here alone.
Yeah. Well, I think this is also the thing, what you were talking about with fire, that fire and also all of the elements teach us humility and teach us literally that we're not in charge and we're not in control of everything that happens.
Absolutely. One of our favorite things is that our group has never lost a controlled burn. We kind of pride ourselves on the fact that we've never lost a prescribed fire. There are quite a few agencies and groups, that start out well-intended, but they go too big. They go too big too fast and they lose control. That's something you don't want to do with fire, is get cocky. Yeah. Because you're not in charge. You think you are, but you're not.
Right. So do you think most of those things, I mean, if ever it does go out of control, it's mostly out of some kind of an arrogance or overconfidence?
In general, sometimes, people just tend to want to go big or go home kind of thing. I tend to like to, pick things off in pieces,
Yeah. No, I have a question for you about scale, because we know that we've kind of pushed the envelope so far with the sort of way we have lived in a destructive way with nature that I wonder what you feel, even if this spreads, worldwide, where we are and what the possibility is for restoration this way, because we know we're way, way, way past the 11th hour here with climate change, with all of the nature of things here now. So, I wonder what comes to your mind? What do you think about as far as scaling this up or being able to really change sort of the course, change the trajectory here of what everyone has these dire predictions of the increase of fires projected?
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky in this area to be able to work with a lot of amazing fire women. Lania Quinn Davidson, we work with, she's in the Humboldt County area. She is teaching certified prescribed burn bosses. So these are burn bosses that don't have to go through the NWCG qualification process. It doesn't take you 10 to 12 years to become a burn boss. It's a course that you go through, you do the training, you participate in the class, you do all the tests, and you get your burn boss to do prescribed burning. That doesn't mean we can go out and control a major fire that's happening anywhere in this continent. It just means that we're capable of leading a prescribed burn. Margot and I will be taking one of those trainings from her. And I really look forward to that because I am one of the people who refuses to become NWCG qualified because I don't believe that the government has the right to tell us as Native people how to restore our land. And I don't believe I need a red card to do that. You know, that piece of paper isn't going to give me any more of the nerve I have now. It's not going to help me. What I want to do is to be able to help people learn that, you know, the land and the people need to work together. We're not there to take it over. We're not there to pour fuel all over it and burn it to death. We're there to work in certain areas. Some areas have low intensity burns. Some need high intensity burns. Certain plants require certain heat. This is why I'm amazed with their knowledge. We give them knowledge, and we've had some very long-term relationships with them.
When you said NWCG, I don't know what that stands for, the acronym.
You know, I can't even remember the acronym, but basically it's the qualifications required by all government fire agencies. Okay. So please excuse me, I can't remember the acronym.
That's okay. Yeah.
I just know that it's
you know what their purpose is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I wondered how it is, your relationship with fire, and how that has evolved and how that has been, you know, whether they are, you know, humble enough to listen, how that relationship works.
We have a great relationship with CAL FIRE, actually. They gave us an award for cooperation with them. We partnered we're on our second grant with them now. This is, our first grant was very nice. This one is extremely large. And it gives us the funding we need to continue to build our projects and purchase the equipment we need and train the people we need to keep moving with this project.
I wonder, you know, how expensive it is even to do some of these burns, like what really is entailed to do them, you know.
You know, when we put on a training exchange, it's usually 10 days. We have a facility, we provide catering, we provide all the fuels, equipment. People that come in for our trainings, if they bring their own equipment, their own trucks, they don't have to pay the fees. The majority of them can train to increase their qualifications in whatever, you know, if they want to be a burn boss or a firing boss or a holding boss, you know, there are many different things they can train in. And so we have our repeat offenders, I call them, because they continually come back, not because of the training, but because of feel, you know, respected and heard. They like the way that we work. And so they want to come back and they want to teach younger generations how to do this right.
So is there any age limit to the trainings or anyone?
We do field trips. We bring out the students from Head Start all the way to high school. But in order to participate with us, you have to be 18 years old because you will be using equipment, chainsaws, weed whackers, you know, dangerous pieces of equipment. But they're taught how to use them. There are trainers there that teach them how to be safe with chainsaws and how to take care of their equipment, how to run an engine. So they learn everything they need to be safe in our environment.
Can you clarify the difference between when you say cultural burn or prescribed burn? Is the prescribed burn just the one that you have kind of scheduled to happen? Or I'm not sure what the difference is.
Prescribed burn, we do training exchanges twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. And those are broadcast burns. They have to be in prescription. basically, certain time of the day, certain winds, certain moistures, humidities, all of that plays into, it's a prescription, basically.
Got it. Okay.
It's written out in a document. We follow it, the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
Our family-based burning does not require a burn plan. I do work very close with the air quality people because I want them to be on our side.
Right.
And even though we're a sovereign nation, we have our own air quality department. I work with both the county and our tribal.
So do you have to get some kind of approval to work? And how do you involve them on the air quality?
Well, Humboldt County Air Quality, per se, they control the permits for fee land. So people who have fee land have to get permits from the air quality. They have to have certain things in place before they can burn on their land.
I see.
When we burn on people's fee land, I approach air quality. I get all the I need for the entire area that we're going to be working on. Mm-hmm. And I have a really good relationship with them. So I feel very comfortable in, working with them and our tribal air quality in order to make everything and everyone very happy.
Well, I'm sure they trust you. I wonder if that was a relationship that was built over time or if it was always actually, more of a smooth process.
I won't lie. When I first took this position as logistics, communication, and planning, basically, I was kind of afraid of the air quality woman because the gentleman who had done it previously pretty much said she was a dragon lady. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be awful. He went into, I have to wine her and dine her and take her candy. And I'm like, oh my God, am I equipped for this?
Right.
So after the first meeting and leaving her office, I thought to myself, my goodness, obviously this fellow was, having a difficult time for no reason because she's wonderful. She helped me with all the paperwork.
Right.
She's a delight, and we've become very close.
It's power of the feminine mystique, I guess. I wondered, I had watched one video that you were, it was, I think, of a prescribed burn somewhere. I can't recall where, but at the end, it showed a little, it had a little pop-up that said that this burn wasn't completed because something to do with the permit. And I didn't know what had happened. Maybe you remember. I don't know. It's a video I found on YouTube. So I just wonder what happens with permits, or if it wasn't too dangerous. What happened that, it couldn't be completed?
Was it one of my burns?
I don't know if it's yours specifically, but it was, related with you or the council. Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think I've had any of those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It just said.
It is really difficult if your burn plans are not completed, if they're not CAL FIRE goes through our burn plans after they're written, and they look at them and they make sure they're within a prescription. So, if your burn plan is wrong, or if your smoke permits are not filed, or if you haven't gotten the proper county permits or state permits, so many things can hold you back. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of making sure you have all those pieces. And that took me a good year, literally, to find out everything I needed to do to not have a failure.
Right. How to navigate all of that.
Yeah.
I listened to another video with Margot Robbins, and she had mentioned that as a kid, where she lived, there was about 50% prairie lands, and that now has been reduced to something like 3%. Yeah, but you've talked about prairie restoration through cultural burning, and I wondered how that is all going. I mean, are you finding that the prairie is restoring quickly, or what's the latest with it?
Well, the prairie she speaks of on her hill, we still have not burned yet. There are prairies close to her that after we burn them, we've been able to increase the space that we now need to eradicate before we can completely restore that prairie. Mm-hmm. So, it's a real fine balance. Fire can wake up something. We have plants out here, Scotch broom or French broom. Their seeds can pop for miles in fire, and they can lay dormant for 70 years.
That's amazing.
So an invasive species that can lay dormant for 70 years is a problem.
Right? So when it wakes up. But there's probably plenty of other species that are waking
when
up.
When it wakes
well.
up, there are. We've found some really amazing native plants come back. Our young botanist, she has been collecting native plants. So it's been really nice to have her doing her study. She goes out, she maps an area before, during, and after a fire. And then we pay attention to what comes up in those areas, and we know what we need to replant.
It's actually quite exciting to know that things can come back just through the use of fire in this way, to have these discoveries and have plants that have been dormant, and ones that like native plants versus ones that you consider invasive or so forth,
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to mention one more thing that, again, Ron Good, it's mainly because I had seen this one video with him, had mentioned, and he had said that fire is always about water. And I wonder if you would elaborate on that, your thoughts on that.
I would have to agree. Margot and I have taken some classes on biochar and realized that we were doing biochar on a massive scale, basically. Mm-hmm. But, Margot was doing an interview standing next to a ditch by a site that we had burned, and she looked down and realized that it was full of water at a time of year when it doesn't have water anymore. Uh-huh. So all of the burning we've been doing has been allowing the water to move back into areas that it hadn't been in for years.
That's amazing.
So there is a definite connection between fire and water.
I guess it also brings the springs back, correct? That fire is part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do a lot of stream restoration while we're burning.
Hey listeners, quick break here. We hope that you're enjoying EcoJustice Radio. Stay connected by subscribing on all major podcast apps and visit our website, ecojusticeradio.org, to check out previous shows and guests and get connected with us on social media. Today you are listening to Cultural Fire, Native Land Management and Regeneration with guest Elizabeth Azzuz of Cultural Fire Management Council and host Carrie Kim.
Have you spoken with people in Australia a lot about fire? Given their recent
actually, Margot went to Australia actually and met with I believe they're called the Bulungara tribe, mm-hmm. and we modeled our healthy country plan after theirs.
Oh, okay. So, do you feel that they were already kind of a step ahead in what they were doing, or?
Oh, they've always been a step ahead where fire is concerned. Mm-hmm. They're where I really want to be, not wearing the Nomax. When I was little, it was shorts and a T-shirt and no shoes. And now you have to be in greens and yellows and boots and helmets. And
yeah, it's very odd, isn't it?
I'd like to go back to just burning.
Well,
it is.
I'm
sure
it's
very controlling.
I understand. Well, isn't that the whole thing with fire, that people do want to control it, or there's a dominance piece there that needs to be changed, as you had mentioned, with control and so forth. It's so serious that it's not really about relationship, as you said. I mean, if it's family, why are you dressing up with a hard hat and I understand there's safety precautions, but your armor to deal with it, and that seems something about that.
Yeah,
not very intimate.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to talk again about this sort of adversarial language that the media has about fire, and everything is always about a fight, and nobody seems to recognize that that's perpetuating this cycle of having something in opposition. And I wondered how you feel you can kind of infiltrate, with language that is actually more balanced and more honoring.
Yeah, we start with our children.
Yeah. Could you share again that story?
We start teaching the younger generation.
I wonder if you could share again that story you were talking to me about before we began, about, that children are around fire at a very early age. You were telling me a story of a child learning fire at a very, very young age.
Mm-hmm. It's grandbabies.
Grandbabies, yeah. That they are learning it. I think was it the one that was 19 months old? I can't remember, but so young.
That was my grandson. He likes to burn his angelica root.
His angelica root.
Margot's grandchildren are, yeah. Margot's grandchildren burn with her. She's been teaching them how to burn. And the real cute part is she does what we call an after-action review, where we discuss what went good in the fire, what do we need to do better, how do we behave? Mm-hmm. And it was very cute to see her grandchildren's response about, you don't play with fire, you don't spin it around your head, they had all kinds of really amazing to say. So it's fun working with children.
Right. Well, I wondered for you, because you were around fire at such a young age, whether it was always something kind of magical and alchemical for you, because I feel that's part of fire's nature. Yeah,
I have a very interesting relationship with fire. My partner, he's always really nervous about it. He's a retired nurse. He's used to being, indoors. He's, he's an outdoorsman. He likes to hunt and do all those things, but fire is not his thing.
Got it.
And usually when I'm burning, he will ask everyone else around me if I'm okay or if I'm being safe, but he never voices that to me. Which I find kind of interesting, but I burn at home a lot, and sometimes he'll be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, we're going to get wind in 2 hours. I got to get this done." For me, it's just a normal chore. For him, it's like, "Oh my God, you're not paying attention," but I really do pay attention to everything around me.
I'm sure you do. I was wondering, when you are preparing for a burn, how long that preparation is. I mean, I'm sure it's variable according to the size and so forth, but, kind of a general, just any kind of idea of what's involved beforehand.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we burn twice a year, generally, the spring and the fall. The fall, we burn a little bit more than we do in the spring, depending on windows of snow and rain and whatever. Mm-hmm. But the planning is year long. We don't take time off. The time in between burns is making sure our permits are good, making sure our burn plans are good, making sure everything is included in what we want to do all season long. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to keep going back and amending things.
Got it.
So it's planning for the future continually.
Mm-hmm. So how we used to think that we had a fire season here in California. And I don't, nowadays people think differently on that, we have fires in fall, we have fires in summer, but that's all because we're out of balance now. So I wonder, how you address that now with your burns, given the different contexts that we're in, with climate change and the nature of degraded soil here and drought and all the factors.
Yeah, I'm extremely lucky to live in a very, very wooded area. Mm-hmm. I'm directly above the confluence of the Klamath and Trinity Rivers, like I said, above my family's village. Everything here is about 2 to 3 months earlier than normal.
Okay.
So I do the food securities for cultural fire also. So I start my starts earlier. I start transplanting earlier. I start doing a lot of things earlier, which helps me to pay attention to my fire weather. We start paying attention to the rainfall, how much we get, how many days in between, rain, how many days of sun are we going to get? Everything becomes a plan. Everything is the great plan. We're constantly looking at it to see when is our next burn window. We're trying to pull off a burn window this weekend. If we can do that, we'll get a prairie reburned. This will be our third entry on it. And just being able to do that, that's where I've seen one of the elk come through our territory. So it's real nice to know that those elk are moving back into our work.
It's amazing what can happen when the habitat is restored. Just who comes back. Organically, it just happens.
It is.
It's a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah, we're kind of spoiled. Our grad students have cameras out in some of their study plots, so we get to see the bear and the deer and the bobcats and mountain lions and things that just tend to wander through the forest.
Yeah, I wondered, when you talk about these windows, whether over the 7 years, given that these megafires have been increasing, especially over the last 5 years, what has changed in the way you plan over those 7 years? Have you found that the windows are smaller?
Yeah, they're a little different. They're a little more erratic than they normally would have been. We could normally plan on a week of really good weather where we know that we're going to be able to put off a perfectly good 10-day burn. Mm-hmm. Now we're lucky if we can get 3 to 5 days of good weather That's not too windy, not too stormy. The conditions have to be just right. And, over the last 7 years, we have seen the changes in the environment. We've seen the changes in, mostly it's policies that hinder what we do. We've literally had to fight to convince people that we know what we're doing. We're good at what we're doing. We're not going to cause another problem. It's selling yourself, basically. It's selling a product. And at this point, fire is what everyone fears, and it's what we work with.
Right. It's natural to you. But do you find that perception has changed? I mean, they feel like they're kind of out of solutions, because their solutions don't work, or it's insufficient and it's misguided. So I don't know if you really found that there has been an increasing receptivity and even outreach to Native peoples, because they know that they don't know how to deal with fire, really.
Yeah, no, we have actually trained quite a few Forest Service participants, and CAL FIRE comes out and burns with us. In the beginning, they would just come and watch, see if we knew what we were doing, make sure that we weren't doing anything out of line. And then eventually they just got to the point where now they send participants out to work with us. We've trained some of their archaeologists. We've trained some of their, fire students. It's just become a nice fit for them to understand that there's another level to fire that they're using, what they're taught, the suppression piece.
There's another.
So there's also another piece it's another tool that they didn't have before.
Different perspective of looking at the fire, relating with the fire, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, it's a good thing. We've even had young natives from other tribes come that are from the military, who've been working in different agencies in the military itself. And some of them wanted to come and see what we were doing because they wanted to restore their reservations. And now, so it was really nice to have that happen.
Yeah, it's wonderful to spread the wisdom, for sure, and regain it or reclaim it, because some people don't, maybe the elders in their community are no longer around who would have known about how to cultural burning.
It's true. For us, the piece that's really, I guess it's difficult for me, because for us, we have multi-generational homes. You're exposed to your grandparents, and, my grandchildren have my mother, they still have their great grandmother.
Right.
And so they're used to hearing things. We have an oral history. We don't have a written history. It's just now that they're starting to document our language and to teach it in the universities and the schools. But, storytelling is a huge piece of who we were, sitting around the fire, talking about, where we came from, our villages, our families. And so, kids get used to that. Yeah. They know that they get to lay on their grandma or their grandpa, and they get to hear stories. They get to hear about how they came to be. And so it's a piece that's missing in modern society. Everyone lives in their own little space and doesn't want anyone in their space. And that the fire makes it hard to interact with the universe.
Sure. And the fire is an essential piece of that, gathering around the fire, right? And then we have on top of that, the overlay of the pyramid and everything that draws up, with the piece of trying distance is more something that is imposed as a norm versus intimacy and family,
Yeah, it's really funny. My kids asked me how we were doing with isolation, and we didn't realize that our normal day is isolation. We live in the woods. We still hunt. We still gather. I see my mom. I take her firewood. I take her things. Then I come home. That's just our normal day.
Right.
But in that day, I see other relatives. I, see neighbors. I drop off foods or whatever. Right. Yeah. But it's really different here. Isolation in the city is completely different than isolation in the wilderness.
Yeah. I would say isolation in the wilderness, there's more connection, but isolation in the city is often loneliness, or, there's some kind of more of a separation involved in that. It's not the same. Yeah. I wanted to ask you,
it was funny when I lived.
You go ahead.
No, go ahead. Fine. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you what the difference is. You talk about burning in a traditional context and also that there's burning in a contemporary way. So I don't know if there's any kind of integration between the two, why that comes up, the different contexts.
When we are doing the training exchanges, we use drip torches, fusees, various different things to start the fire.
So
when I am doing a traditional or a cultural burn, I use wormwood, angelica root, and even pitchy sticks to start my fire. I don't try to use any chemicals at all. Matter of fact, there's no herbicides, fungicides, GMOs, anything on our reservation. We don't allow it.
Right. And is it also when we
try to stay as chemical free?
And is it also when you're doing those burns with wormwood and angelica, that's also kind of a sacred, is it also an offering in that way, or is that part of the process?
For me, yeah. So I've always said a prayer quietly before we started our prescribed burns for our treks. Margot asked me to do those during the opening of our burns now. And so basically when I open our prayer, it's asking permission from the grandparents to put the greatest tool to use and asking permission from the one-legged tree people and the birds and the animals to come into their home and to put fire on their ground, to restore the land, to restore their food and, to help them as well as us. So, there's a huge connection there. You have to include everyone in that environment. We can't just walk in and say, oh, I'm going to do this and you're going to like it. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
You have to have permission from the ancestors. You have to have their wishes to make this right. So, as a participant of ours, she said that was the first time she had ever cried at a training. And, I apologized. I was like, oh, my God, I didn't mean to make you cry. And she said, no, I had never heard anyone invoke their ancestors before to ask permission.
People don't know to ask.
To me, that's part of who we are.
Right. Step number one, right?
Ask permission. You cannot just assume. Yeah.
You do not pass go, right? Without asking for permission.
Exactly. The ancestors are in charge no matter how much we like to balk.
Yeah, right. People like to do things unilaterally, but that's what is the problem with, society here as we know it, like colonial settler kind of society. It just operates that way, Yeah. It's DIY. Everything is all about the ego and the self and it, But, I wondered if you could...
it's true.
Share a little bit about these elder structure protection burns and how you go about that and what that actually does and how long, is that also twice a year or how does that work?
The elder structure burns usually happen during our family burns. So a family member has to be there to ignite the fire. And then our crew and family members that participate, we guide the fire, we take care of it. We burn all around their home. We leave a complete fire buffer.
Okay.
If they have natural resources on their property, they allow families to come and gather. It's just something we do to protect our elders. They've done everything for us. Now it's our turn to do for them. So it's extremely important to make sure our elders are safe, that our single families are safe, that our community is not going to burn up. It's our top priority. Is land restoration and security of our people.
So is it mostly that people come to you for that or that everyone kind of knows or I sees that so-and-so's house is not looking so safe or we should be doing that?
It depends, people apply to have their property burned through our program. We prioritize them based on cultural resources and elder structure protection. Like I said, we need to make sure that they're safe. But we have stacks and stacks of applications of people wanting to have us help them. And we're a small group, which is why we're hiring and training more people so that we can accommodate, all these families.
It seems it will only increase. I also just wanted to quickly ask whether you're also working with public lands or only on reservation land primarily.
I actually just did a tour of a plot in Oric, California with the Save the Redwoods League. Mm-hmm. So we'll be burning with some of the park services that are in our ancestral territory. The Yurok ancestral territory is 40,000 hectares.
Wow.
Which Margot taxed us with burning. So it's going to be a minute or two before we get done.
Yeah, just a minute. We are unfortunately have to close out our interview, but I wondered if you could share some of the links where people can connect with you, if you can share about I don't know if the current treks has already happened or is coming up. If you could share with listeners, how can they remain connected with you and the work that the Culture Fire Management Council is doing?
Yeah, Cultural Fire Management Council has a Facebook page and an Instagram page, but you can also, you can find the links for the prescribed burning, the treks on the Nature Conservancy's prescribed fire page.
Okay.
And you can apply there. They take all the applications and then they notify us how many people, and then we go through and pick. Our largest treks has been 50 participants, which was much too large for us. So we normally go to about 30 people.
Okay. Well, we will post out all the links as well so that listeners can find you. And we thank you so much for just being connected to your deep lineage and traditions, and for carrying this forward for future generations. It is our blessing and our privilege to speak with you tonight. So thank you, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm honored.
We are so grateful to you and all that you and Margot and the rest of, are all doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to our guest today, Elizabeth Azzuz, Secretary of Cultural Fire Management Council, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. This has been Cultural Fire, Native Land Management, and Regeneration. Please connect with us on social media at EcoJustice Radio and SoCal 350. If you like what you heard and you want others to be informed, subscribe and share the episodes. You have been listening to EcoJustice Radio, a project of SoCal 350. The show can be found on all major podcast apps and at ecojusticeradio.org. Created by Mark and JP Morse, executive producer Jack Ite, engineer Blake Lampkin, interview hosted by Carrie Kim, and original music by Javier Cadre. And until next time, remember, the power is yours.